Hi, welcome back once again to the Elvis Conspiracy. My name is Jeff Dixon, and we're looking at the life, death, and life, maybe, of Elvis Presley and the conspiracy theories that surround his exit. And so we're asking the question, has Elvis really left the building? In this particular episode, we're going to look at August 16th, 1977. The timeline of events of that day become wildly important in the story and history and life and death of Elvis Presley. At 12:30 a.m., or somewhere between 12:30 and 1:30 a.m. that day, Elvis returned to Graceland from his dentist appointment that we talked about in our previous episode. He was reported to be energetic, optimistic, good-humored, and full of plans for the future. At 4 a.m., Elvis called Billy Smith and Billy's wife Jo to join him and Ginger on the racquetball court for an hour of playing racquetball. Elvis was still wearing the jogging suit that he had worn to the dentist appointment earlier, and apparently during the course of playing racquetball, he whacked himself on the leg, on the shin, with the racket during the game. The injury was severe enough to leave a mark on his leg at the time, and caused him to end the game early just because it hurt. As a side note, and we'll talk about this at another time, no mark was noted on the autopsy report as an injury or mark or some injury that had been sustained on the body when they were actually making notes about the body of Elvis Presley. At 5 a.m., an hour after they had started, Elvis sat at the piano in the lounge area of the racquetball building. If you ever went to Graceland, you had seen this before. You knew how this was laid out. And they sang songs around the piano after the game. At 6 a.m., Elvis and Ginger went up to his bedroom where he changed in his pajamas. They were powder blue. By most reports, watched TV and read. At 8 a.m., 2 hours later, Elvis told Ginger he was going into the bathroom lounge area to read. A note at this point, because it will become important in just a minute, the bathroom has its own back entrance that leads downstairs to Graceland as well. And at some point, we will show you the floor plan of the off-limits upstairs area is Graceland. It's not open to the public, but yet the architecture, the drawings are there, and they are available. Between 8 and 8:30 a.m., Elvis called Dr. Nick at his office for some sleeping pills. And although Dr. Nick was not there, Elvis spoke with the nurse, so somewhere around 8:30. At 9:30 a.m., Elvis left the bathroom and went downstairs to sign for a special delivery letter from Paul Lichter. At 10 a.m., Elvis was seen retrieving his newspaper from the front porch of Graceland. At the very least, 3 hours transpired before the reported time of the body being discovered. But somewhere after he picked up the paper, between 2 p.m. and 2:30 p.m., Ginger Alden woke up, made some phone calls, and then remembered that earlier in the morning, of course, days and nights are all flipped upside down at Graceland, that Elvis had gone into the bathroom lounge area. And so when we talk about a bathroom here, we're talking about a huge area. It's not a bathroom like most of us would think of a bathroom. And so there's a big area that is a dressing room, lounge, and some other things that are there. According to police notes, the body was found as Ginger went in there in a kneeling position with his knees almost touching his chin, head down, face on the carpet. Ginger called downstairs to Al Strada, Elvis's friend and employee who was in the kitchen. Al came upstairs and called downstairs for Joe Esposito, Elvis's friend and staff manager. Dr. Nick was called. Joe, realizing there was a problem with Elvis, also noticed that rigor mortis had set in, and he was telling the fire department that. And Joe and others rolled the body over and started CPR. At 2:33, Rescue Unit number 6 arrived at Graceland, and the paramedics that we met in an earlier episode continued CPR despite the body showing signs of rigor mortis already setting in. At 2:48 p.m., this is now after the body was discovered at approximately 2:30, At 2:48 p.m., the body was transported to Baptist Memorial Hospital. At 2:56 p.m., the body of Elvis Presley arrived at Baptist Memorial Hospital, dead on arrival. At 3 p.m., family and friends were informed of Elvis's death. At 3:30 p.m., the fans and the public were told that Elvis had died, 1 hour after the body had been discovered. At approximately 7 p.m. that night, the body was being prepared for an autopsy, and at approximately 7:30 p.m., the initial body inspection is completed. The body inspection, by the way, is when the medical examiner does an external viewing of the body, making notations as to the condition of the body, signs of injury, etc., etc. Think back, racquetball injury just a few hours earlier in the day. At 8 p.m., Dr. Nick and Dr. Francisco, the medical examiner for Shelby County, were interviewed in a press conference. Now let's stop just a minute there, because that is the day that Elvis died. And so, just as we did on the day before, as we looked at the timeline, let's make some observations or share some thoughts about that particular timeline, the day that Elvis died, what's there, and some things to ask yourself or ponder just a little bit deeper. For a 10:30 p.m. appointment, Elvis returned at 12:30 to 1:30 a.m. And so, it begs a question, and it's a good question, that no one really has answered a whole lot. But Elvis went in for a teeth cleaning and to have some a filling fixed. But it was a private appointment set up where there was no wait at a dentist office, and the appointment was slightly over 2 hours. It seems like a long time to be in a dentist office at that time of night. Maybe there was some extra care given, maybe there was something else that needed to be done. But anyway, that's a long extended period of time. A little suspect, but it was a dentist appointment. Why would Elvis wear his law enforcement jogging suit to the dentist? For those that are involved in law enforcement, officers, deputies, troopers, or agents don't usually wear their uniforms, fatigues, or other official clothing while off duty. For Elvis, it was assumed, and it's probably a safe assumption, he wore stuff like that because it had been given to him as gifts. So, although some think that's strange, maybe not. But if a filling was attended to, and Elvis had his teeth clean, one would have to presume that something would have been given to him for the pain. More likely, that would have been Novocaine or some other pain reliever during the dental procedure. He had an awful lot of energy coming back from the dental appointment, so much so that he wanted to go play racquetball. And so obviously the work that had been done was not extensive enough to say, one, go back to earlier, the long time period, or two, more of a general kind of appointment, just to take care of some business maybe before you leave on tour or go other places. But then it adds another question to the mix. And this one is just kind of one of those, I don't know, we don't live in Elvis's world. We don't understand the way that maybe rock stars worked at the time. But why on August 15th did Elvis decide then that he needed the work done right then? I mean, he had been at Graceland a long time, and why at the night before he's supposed to be on tour at 10:30 does he decide he needs the dental work done? Dentists are very mindful of the fact of the medical conditions of their patients, and so there would be probably some precaution because Elvis wasn't in the best physical health. You might find that a dentist might be a little hesitant to work on Elvis, especially knowing some of the images that you saw of Elvis in his prior concerts up before his death, and some of the weight issues he was dealing with. Were there some problems there? I don't know. It's also interesting that Elvis had a great amount of energy to play racquetball after the dental appointment. There are conflicting statements about what Elvis did or didn't do as he went into that lounge area. But the one event that is interesting that doesn't seem to fit into anybody's timeline, or one that was talked about often, was his going downstairs to accept delivery for a package that he signed for. Why would he go downstairs to accept a package at Graceland when he has a full staff to do that? What would be in this letter, this special delivery letter from Paul Lichter? And then, who is Paul Lichter? And had Elvis been expecting a delivery to arrive at that particular time? And then why did he sign for it himself? Graceland has people for that, and yet Elvis made that appearance. In an interview with the supervisor at the post office there in Memphis, it was found that the normal delivery person that day was not the person that brought that particular letter to Graceland. Matter of fact, it was reported later that they didn't recognize who the delivery person actually was. The commission, Presley Commission, contends that the carrier was someone who was selected to drive the vehicle, that no one would ever suspect a mail truck coming and going from Graceland at that time of day. The theory that many conspiracists has, it wasn't just a letter that was delivered that day, but maybe even something beyond that. Go back, if you will, to our earlier reports of a certain delivery that was being expected from Atlanta, a purchase that was made by Vernon and some of the boys from Memphis just earlier in the month. The contents of the letter to Elvis that was sent is always a matter of speculation. To this day, it's not really known what was in that special delivery letter. At 10 a.m., Elvis was seen on his own front porch picking up the newspaper. His presence would have been made obvious to others. Elvis was obviously out and about up that morning, somewhere between 2 and 2:30. Ginger stated that she awoke and proceeded to make some phone calls. At what point did she become concerned with Elvis's absence? Obviously, she went looking for him to the place that she knew that hours before he was going to be. Was the assumption that he was still there? Was the assumption he was somewhere else in the house? Those who are bound to conspiracy theory believe that she was already aware there was a plan in place. And so part of the narrative was simply that she had to get up and go check on Elvis. There were a number of people that stated that the body they found did not appear to be Elvis. A body that is already fixed in rigor mortis is not a body that you do CPR on. Normally, it would take 8 to 12 hours for rigor mortis like that to set in. It had not been that long. That doesn't fit anywhere in the timeline. And there are some conflicts to where the body was actually found. Was it found in the bathroom in front of the commode? Was it found in a sitting chair in the lounge area? There were obviously intercoms that were there. If something had happened and there was a medical emergency, would Elvis have had the opportunity to call for assistance? Perhaps he would have. There were certainly ample places for him in that lounge bathroom area to do such a thing. In either case, the questions in the aftermath were, why did his dad not go to the hospital with his only son? Vernon did not go to the hospital when they took Elvis out of Graceland that day. Conspiracy theorists would say, well, he didn't go because he knew it wasn't his only son. Vernon didn't go because he wasn't concerned. Vernon didn't go because he knew that Elvis wasn't really dead. Joe Esposito and Dr. Nick were the ones that were asked to identify the body, not the next of kin. Again, unusual, odd, certainly not the standard operating procedure of the Memphis Police Department, but yet on this particular day, that seemed to be the norm. August 16th, 1977. Yeah, nothing on that day seems like a normal day for anybody. Having dealt with people who have passed away, having dealt with death, I know that sometimes when you try to put the timelines together, it gets very muddled and confused. This, at first read, is just a very wildly conflicted report of what Elvis's last day was like. But the lingering questions that are there, again, linger for those that are looking for something beyond just the standard Elvis died. It fuels the thought that there's something more that's happening here. A cover-up, a conspiracy, a man faking his own death. Again, we're just looking at evidence, and we're telling a story. And we'll continue that story in our next edition of the Elvis Conspiracy.